Hello world, hello Facebook, hello all those watching this on listenvisionlive.com. It's the Nitty Gritty Show. It's your boy Jay DeCosta.
It's your girl Katniss.
And together we are the Nitty Gritty.
It's Tim Wise. You're watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
Everybody, this is Stevie Powell. You're now watching the Nitty Gritty Show. Check it out.
And so I'm DeCosta, and you need to watch the Nitty Gritty Show.
My name is Sherman Moss, and you're watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
That's the Grant Thompson, aka G. Ainsworth, and you're watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
I'm Anthony White, and this is the Nitty Gritty Show.
Yeah.
Bam, it's Jay Thompson. You're watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
You are watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
My name is Jay Grant Thompson, and guess what? You're in tune to the Nitty Gritty Show.
I'm Will Jawando, and you're watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
And my name is Mitch Holmes, and you're watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
And my name is Peter DeCosta, and you're watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
This is Pastor Rob, and you're on the Nitty Gritty Show.
I'm Ray Pittman, and you're watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
Hey, this is Joni Ford of Ford Wellness, and you're watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
Yo, what's going on? It's your boy Benny Black, and you are watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
It's time for the Nitty Gritty. Conversations be real live. It's time for the Nitty Gritty. The revolution's not televised. It's time for the Nitty Gritty. Reaching out to your conscious mind. It's time for the Nitty Gritty. More than talking, we taking action. It's time for
Yo, what's going on world? What's going on Facebook? Everybody catching us live on listenvisionlive.com. It's your boy Jay
It's
DeCosta.
your girl Katniss.
And together we are the Nitty
Nitty
Gritty. Excited about our show today. We've been actually wanting to have some more conversations around educations and schools. And with the climate going on right now in our country, I think this is a very timely conversation. And we have two beautiful young ladies with us here today. We have Tiffani Smith. Tiffani is a Cleveland, Ohio native.
Yes,
So
Cleveland.
definitely a Cavs fan, right?
Yes, I love
Browns.
Indians, everything, Cleveland.
Yeah, so happy to have Tiffani on. She's also a teacher here in the Maryland area, Bowling Green State University grad, and is also currently working on a new project, or might be even a podcast, 20s and Teaching with Tiff.
Yes.
20s and Teaching, you know.
Yes.
Hopefully she'll do something in conjunction with the Nitty Gritty when she do it. We'll see. We'll talk about it, you know. And then also we have, to my right, Shantal Russell. Shantal in the building.
Yes.
Washington, D.C. native. That's what's
Yes.
up. Let them know. 202. Southeast. We won't hold that against you. It's all about Uptown. But, hey, it's cool. Go-go music and all that, right? Ben's Chili Bowl, Mumbo Sauce. Yeah, all that. Yeah, so D.C. native, has a natural heart to her service, music teacher here in the D.C. area, has a nonprofit also called Let's Talk Girl Talk for young ladies from ages from 10 to 18. So even my daughter falls into that. That's awesome. And then also a graduate of the University of Hartford out there in Connecticut.
Yep.
So I'm happy to have these two young ladies on. I think they're going to bring a wealth of knowledge to this conversation. It's going to be a good one. And I'm just, happy to chop it up with you guys and just talk more about education. But before we get down to the nitty gritty, for you guys that watch the show, y'all know we got to give out these to hell whiffs and we got to give some blessings. I got a couple of to hell whiffs. I try to keep them low, but man, like the world is crazy and I got to call it out. So, Jay, can you play that first video for me? And then we'll talk a little bit about it.
This is a story all about how
Our bills get flipped into a law.
I'd like to take a minute and just sit right there.
I'll tell you how a bill becomes law in this our chamber.
In the legislator's mind, an idea is raised.
In the law book is where they spend most of their day.
Drafting out, maxing out, hardly relaxing, all cool.
And all introducing bills inside of House chambers.
We're more than a couple of guys. Start reviewing the bill.
Are they making changes in committee on the Hill?
They may get in one little fight, but it's just because they care.
They say we're moving this bill back to the floor and we'll argue it there.
Speaker Hughes whistles for a vote and the answer is clear.
And the bill passes and goes over the Senate to hear.
If it passes the Senate, then the bill's probably fair.
You thought it was law, but it's just not quite there.
It goes up to the governor to determine its date.
And if it's good, Herbert might even be signing it later.
Look at that bill. It's finally there. Sitting as law, ready to be declared.
Yeah, so, definitely need some more seasoning on that chicken. Yeah, it was whack. I think that's what I would call culture appropriation. When you look at the background of all these individuals, all of them but one, I think it was Susan Duckworth, they're all Republicans. They all come from very privileged backgrounds, all of them ranging from anywhere from healthcare administrators, doctors, developers. I thought it was really lame with the dude with his hat backwards. I don't know what he's trying to do. Then the one other guy with a hat on said, "Make America Great Again," obviously a fan of Trump. So a lot of bull crap on there. And this was recently made. This was March 1st of 2018, by the way. So it's not like this is some old archive video that finally went viral. This is fairly fresh, and they got together and they thought this was a good idea. No rhythm, no tempo. We were all laughing while we were watching the video. It was pretty horrible, so I got to give that a to hell with. But one thing to credit to Utah, when I was looking up their state ranking, because I wanted to roast them really bad, the state actually doesn't do well in a lot of the different rankings, so I couldn't like go at them like I wanted to. But y'all still lame for that, so y'all get it to hell with. Then also, I got to call out people who don't tip well. So, you know, if you go to a restaurant, look, an acceptable tip is 20%. They even have now out there 25%. I don't know, that might be a bit much, like a fourth of what I've already paid. I gave to give that also too. But no, if you're gonna go out to eat, tip. You know, tipping is a good thing. Now, if somebody's services suck, then, you know, sometimes I give them like a bare minimum of $5, depending on how much I'm spending, or maybe I'll give them the 10%, or I'll just vocalize my problems with them with the manager. But keep in mind, those tips are not just for that waiter. They still pay like the bus services and all that kind of bar. So when you tip, you know, that server might have got on your nerve, but the other people might be doing the best they can to lift their part of the weight. So don't take it all out on them. Just tell the manager they suck and maybe they'll get fired or something. But people, we got to tip, especially, you know, my people. Let's tip, y'all. We got to tip. Then also, gotta call out this IHOP picture. That's why we talking about tipping. So yeah, there it is right there. If you look closely, there's the server must have been Dwayne. Now we don't know if Dwayne is black or white. That name can go either way, right? But he decided to label his table as black people. Oh no. So last time I checked, now y'all correct me wrong if you guys have ever done any kind of food service, they have all the tables numbered, right? Right. So all you have to do is just put the number of the table on there. Why you had to put black people? Now, this was in Austin, Texas, so maybe they don't get many there, but that shouldn't have any relevance on the fact that they're at table 48, table 2. Just label the table. You didn't have to call out black people. That's pretty lame because, you know, why do you have to put out the color? What's the significance of that? And that's a whole nother conversation. We won't do that today, but hell with to that. And then also the other one for a lot of you in the D.C. area, or I think it went viral on a lot of people's social media, how they ambushed Danny Starr on the radio was crazy. And to give the folks a little bit of background, all she did was, I guess she had a week before talked about how she was looking for a nanny. People were hitting her up in her DMs. A particular young lady who is a Instagram model decided to say, hey, I could take care of your kids. I guess Danny had put out there that her and her husband has had problems with infidelity in the past, so she wasn't trying to have a snack parading around her house, taking care of the kids in some booty shorts. I could understand that. Like, yeah, who would want that? Like, even the most faithful man, why would you just want to have that out there? You know, y'all get into an argument, something happens, she thirsty because obviously you doing well enough to have a nanny. I mean, that's a recipe for disaster. So she has the right, and she had said that she has the right to decide who she wants to bring into her house. And they shouldn't, and then those are her co-hosts. They should have respect for her just as an employee or a fellow co-worker, not to do that to her on her own show. That was real lame. So definitely to hell with to that. They were some real suckers for that, and the nitty gritty, we gotta call that out. But always enter on a quick, happy note. Blessings to Black Panther tops 1 billion now. I believe this is the fourth. Is this the fourth week out? Is it the fourth week?
It came out February 15th, right?
Yeah, so this will be the fourth week then. Yeah, so the movie's doing amazing. It's gonna keep on grossing more. It'll probably start fizzling out at 1.5.
And they're doing a sequel too.
Yeah, they're doing the sequel. Yeah. And then the top 2 movies in America are both, diverse or black cast, because the number 2 movie was A Wrinkle in Time, right? Ava DuVernay. So shout out black directors and stuff and creators putting stuff out there. So I'm loving it. And then gotta shout out some other special things. A quick one on my homegirl Kim Wright. Her birthday's today. But then also a special one. I got a picture right here. Shout out to my son Juan DaCosta. He's 10-year-old today, March 11th. So definitely cuter than I was at that age. If I had half of what he had, you know what I'm saying? Like, it would have been different out here. So, yeah, shout out to him. Love him wherever you are. I know you're having a good time, probably with your nana and your mama. And now we just gonna get down to the nitty gritty because education is important to me. I just had a long conversation with them yesterday on the phone about education and all that. They're really smart, but still, just got to give them that extra, keep them on track, right? So definitely want to talk about education. We have the right people here with us today to talk about education. And I guess one thing I want to start the conversation off with you, and either one of you could go first. I guess it's not directly to any particular. I actually want you both to answer. But what got you guys into teaching? I know you guys teach different grade levels or a different concentration, but still, like, I'm pretty sure some of the reasoning probably would be the same. But what got you to teaching?
You go. So, interestingly enough, I didn't think that I would start off teaching because I went to school for music, so I'm a music teacher.
Okay.
And so I thought that I would end teaching, in my career, my musical career by teaching music. I never thought that I would start off, and it just kind of found me. I didn't go looking for it, and I love it. I absolutely adore going to work every day.
That's what's up. And I guess since you're passionate about it, probably makes a difference as far as your impact, right?
Absolutely.
I want to get more into that, but Tiffany, what got you to teaching?
So the same thing with me. I actually didn't go to college saying I'm going to college to be a teacher. I actually wanted to be a journalist, and then just hearing a lot of people's stories. I worked at a summer camp, and I was like, wow, I'm kind of good at this. Like, I think I could do this. And so let me change my major to education. And so my mom taught children's church, so I was there getting the juice together. We would be at the grocery store on Saturday night, ready for snack on Sunday the next day. So it just kind of fell into place. Like, it found me too. And so I do have kindergartners right now. I thought I would be with older grades, but actually they are teaching me a lot. So I'm so glad. It's fun every day. I come home with a story, so I wouldn't have it any other way right now.
That's what's up. That's what's up. So I'm happy that you guys. I'm happy to hear that path. That it wasn't like, because I've ran into people. They're like, I just taught because it was nobody else hiring, so I just heard me got an education certification and taught. And I think there's a certain ethic or work ethic that they have that,
absolutely,
and a certain kind of energy or thought process they have to it that you guys definitely don't share, like those negatives. I hear a lot of positive, but do you see that being an issue that with some of your coworkers or people you come across in your field that, they're doing it just as a job? And does it also reflect in the way that you see maybe how they interact with children?
I think it really has to do with the culture of the school. Not just you getting up to go to work every day because you're going to be able to teach amazing children, which is absolutely true, but you have to be able to work in a healthy environment. And sometimes you don't go into it feeling that way, but sometimes it can get to that place. Wow. And if you aren't careful, you will become average with your teaching, and then it will reflect on the children. And so I don't think that all teachers go into it with that mindset. I think that it's kind of brought upon them or brought to them with all of the things that come with it, because there's so much that comes with teaching. We don't just, get up in front of students and talk about why music is important and why, you should have a variety or a diverse, outlook on music. We don't. I mean, I know that I don't. We go to school and we do a bunch of different things. We talked about it a little before the show even started. And so, and I think that it does reflect. You don't have the right intent, and that's with anything that you're passionate about or anything that you are doing that you don't, really feel comfortable with. It's always that backlash piece, and you got to be careful with that. But yes, I have seen it, and yes, I have seen children, have a negative reaction towards it.
How about you, Tiffany?
I agree. Shout out to Dana Thomas. I just learned this, that you go into it, you may have gone into it with a lot of energy. By the way, I'm a first-year teacher, so I'm just coming out of college in May. So I've learned that it's this thing called compassion, compassion burnout, right? Like, you've given so much, you care so much to the point, compassion fatigue, to the point where, like, you're tired. It's no more that you can give, and then it's just straight burnout, right? I'm numb. I can't do anything anymore. And so a lot of people, now that I'm an educator, you have to see it from both sides. Yeah. Like, a lot of people take a step back and say, they're not engaged. These kids are being let down, but nobody's pouring into them to fill another person's cup. You can't fill a cup when nothing is coming from yourself. And so
I like that.
So those are the two things that I've learned. And so I am a giddy person. I came out the womb hype, And so that's just me. So I'm singing with my kids. They sing back. And so just to those teachers who do have that burnout or the compassion fatigue, that, your purpose is so much higher.
Yeah.
You were put there for a reason. And so I hope that can be some inspiration, but it does affect the kids. I've seen someone get disciplined before, and when they got down to the nitty gritty of the problem, I said, "What's going on?" He just said he was bored. He didn't like the books he was reading. Yeah. And that turned into talking out of turn and lashing out.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it does affect the kids.
I was gonna say, when you guys have issues, do you find that there may be possibly something going on at home, and how do you guys discover what's going on at home? Do you have conversations with the parents, or do the teachers divulge into their own personal life with you one-on-one?
I'll go first, and maybe she will have more expertise just because I'm in kindergarten now. They're only like 5 and 6, but even though they're only 5 and 6, that's when they tell the straight truth. So yes, I sat down with a student. What's going on? Well, a family member, a sibling was taken from the home. And so, that is hard to talk about. Or with a 5-year-old, what's going on? My pet died. That could be traumatic.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes stuff does happen at home. Sometimes I can pull it out of them. Sometimes I can't, and I have to go and ask the parents. But maybe your take.
I work at a charter school. And so we specifically deal with children who are being, mistreated, or who, have learning deficiencies or whatever the case may be. And I'm really good with young girls. And so if there's, something going on, I've even a couple months ago, I pulled a student out of the classroom because it was a fear of him being bullied. I wasn't sure if it was the truth. And so I pulled him out, and he broke down crying. And he was a 5th grader. And I'm like, and I consistently, I spoke into his life. I kept on saying, you are enough, you are enough, you are enough, you are enough. Because when the kids leave their parents, you become that. You instantly take on that role. And it can be a lot. It can be so heavy. And I remember after having that conversation with him, going downstairs into one of the offices and crying. Just bawling out in tears because I was so affected by the way that this child felt. And ultimately, this comes from home. You know what I'm saying? You're taught that you're beautiful. You're taught that you should have, self-confidence and self-love. And if those things aren't taught to you, then bullying becomes it affects you in a different kind of way. And bullying is a whole nother topic for a whole nother.
Actually, I do want to ask a question, though. Are there any procedures or things that the school puts in place to protect kids against bullying?
Absolutely.
Because I know when I was in school, there was a lot of bullying. I went to a really big high school. She knows. My high school's over 2,000 kids. If you didn't have Uggs or name brand, you were like dogs. And there were kids that I honestly felt like they probably were going to commit suicide because you can tell they were really affected by it. So how do you handle bullying, and what plans do your schools have in place to combat bullying, if any?
So I don't do bullying at all. I do not like bullies. I do not deal with bullying in my class. As a matter of fact, when we had one of the young ladies at a school had committed suicide. I don't know if you guys had heard about it from DC.
Mm-hmm. I remember that story.
I remember changing my whole lesson plan, and I was like, you know what? We're talking about bullying for the remainder of the week, because they don't. Sometimes kids don't know. You have to tell kids that, and so I have a zero tolerance of bullying, and I mean that. I cannot deal with it. And of course, we have support from our administrators that, once we find out this is happening, I go straight to the source. I don't waste any time, because, that's a life, that could possibly be saved. So I don't, and our staff comes behind us, and they get it in check.
I would say the same for my school. And, what's great about being with the younger ones is that I start from the root of where the issue can grow. Even though they're so little, they think I can't hear. I don't like that. You're being mean. No, I stop it. We role play. Say, hey, that made me feel. Say how it made you feel. That made me feel sad.
I like that.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Well, Sally, what do you say back to Susie? Well, Susie, I'm sorry. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Okay? Because the problem is that these kids don't know how to, it's not their fault, but they're not modeled how to solve problems.
Yeah.
That is where the issue stems from. Susie looked at me funny, And now I'm going around talking to Johnny and Drew and everyone, and I'm talking about her, and now a rumor done spread, and maybe she just had a bad day. She just had a stank look on her face, but now it's just then escalated to something else. Shout out to my students that I had in Toledo. It was a lot of that going on, and yeah, it's just put out when the administration comes. I've seen kids being pulled, and shout out to those administrators who take zero tolerance.
Because there are some who do not.
Yeah.
Be doing the most. So like, even with like, you know, I hear that, you know, you guys are looking at, you know, somehow kids are neglected. You're looking at bullying. Do you feel at times, or do you feel like the way that the culture and the climate of today's society, that maybe teachers are having to take on too much? Because, you know, I've seen it where, you know, some teachers do get overwhelmed because you have to teach to the standardized testing, or making sure that you know, you can actually show growth or the achievement gaps. Mm-hmm. Then at the same time, you're having to be wary of so many things, because there is a decline in just, I guess, this decline period in this ethics and morals in this country. So therefore, parents are not doing the job that maybe they need to do at home. And I know that can put a strain on what you guys have to do in the classroom. And I feel like that's almost like a distraction, like all this stuff that you have to do as far as like, you know, teaching kids on just life probably gets in the way of music and your ABCs and your colors and, you know, learning words and the difference between there, and there, or sale, and sale. Right. So does that seem like too much sometimes to take on, or do you feel like there's a lot being asked of you guys?
You know, I don't think that it is too much all the time. I think when it becomes too much, it is when the parent, you're instilling these values and morals into children, and then they go back home to the same thing. Yes.
Okay.
And every time they come back, you have to reteach it. And I think that is when it gets to be overwhelming, because they're not going, like you said, they don't have the models, they don't have these things, so they're not going home to stability. They're just not. Some mamas aren't home, some daddies aren't home, some of them are living with their grandparents, and so it becomes a lot when you have to be redundant, you know, and being redundant is a part of what we do. We repeat ourselves all day long. We repeat
I can imagine. See, I don't think that's why I could teach, because I don't like to repeat myself twice to adults. So I can imagine, and I don't like kids. I like mine because I like my nieces and all that stuff, because I can reach out and touch them. You know, if they couldn't, I'd be like, hey, you know what I'm saying? Like, get it right. But other kids, I can't put my hands on you. I just don't want to deal with you, because like I can't even correct you. Like, and I'm like, stop. Wait, hold up. Do you hear me? I can't do that. I don't have the patience. Like, God bless y'all.
And then I think the other part of it is when you get too attached to the child.
Ooh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
You know what I'm saying?
You don't even consider that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I never considered that.
You fall in love with these children. They become yours. You're with them for 8 hours every day, 40 hours a week.
Probably see them more than you do your own family.
Yes, indeed. You know, when you don't see them, you're planning for them.
Yes.
Wow.
You know, so yeah, I think those are the only 2 times when it's too much. But other than that, I absolutely love giving and serving.
I like that. Now, you know, we kind of hinted on achievement gaps and closing those achievement gaps, and we have those issues in the country. I mean, definitely, like from schools that were surrounded by more affluence versus, you know, impoverished areas. When we start looking at the difference, the demographic of money that is spent on kids of color versus, you know, kids that come from, I guess that would still fall into privilege, but we know there's a systemic issue around income and wealth in this country. So it does become a color thing after a while, or you can't ignore it. Do you see some challenges there as far as like the tools you're giving or funded with? Like, for instance, like I grew up a military brat. So as long as I was on post or, you know, in a federally funded school, we always had great textbooks. We always had computer labs, state-of-the-art stuff, even, you know, through, you know, kindergarten all the way up into middle school when I was within that system. We always had great stuff. Towards the end of 8th grade year, when I went to a local school system, and that was out there in Tennessee, it was like I remember when I went to high school, the book they were using for the 9th grade history, I used that same book in 6th grade in the military school. So I just wonder, like, when it comes to achievement gaps, you know, like funding and all of that, do you guys feel like you're supported properly, or do you have teachers that feel like they're not being supported properly and given the tools needed to educate?
I can speak to that just because it's my first year. And so when I say this, I come from Cleveland. I had Cleveland Public Education from K through 12th grade. Right. So I do know what it's like to be the student in the impoverished school without the resources. So now that I'm on the other side and now I'm the teacher that only has this amount and I have to make so much, sometimes it is frustrating. But like I said, I'm giddy, and it's just that grit you have to have when you have to find other resources. You got to figure out what works for your students to make them reach their goal. I have ESOL level 1 kids. I had a student that just came last week from South America, no English. So how can I get her to a level 6 reading book by the end of the year? And you know that affects me getting signed on for the next year of teaching. So you know, sometimes it is stressful to figure out, you know, we're magicians as well. Teachers are magicians. Because how am I going to do this with some of my kids who I teach them this book? We learn this English, all of that, and then they go home and not a word of English is spoken the whole weekend, and they're back in this back again. It's like building a house of cards and it falls down on Friday. So it's just, you have to get fun activities. You have to be engaging. You have to find something that works for you and your students so that they can remember, hey, like Miss Smith did this really fun thing. I remember that. I'm going to talk about it to my parents. I'm going to bug my parents so they can look up on YouTube and play me the sight word song and the letter song. So sometimes it is overwhelming, but it's just a job that we went into and you got to get it done.
Yeah, because I was looking at the ranking of schools. So like it looks like Maryland is number 11 and Virginia's right behind it at number 12 for overall education. They actually rank pretty high, or if not middle to high, in most ratios. Even when you start looking at like education equality. I know DC has an issue, and I think that's weird because everybody knows that these education like gaps. When you start looking at Maryland, because we know what's going on in Baltimore County is horrendous, but then we know that Montgomery County, Howard, maybe like pieces of Anne Arundel, they're getting most of that attention. PG somehow drops off the map despite all the funding. But then you see the same thing in Virginia. We know that Northern Virginia gets a lot of attention, but once you start going out towards Virginia Beach and Norfolk, you see a drop in those performance standards. So it's amazing how all this money is circulating because of DC, but yet DC
is the last to get it.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask them quickly, how are you assessed? How are you assessed as a teacher, and how are your students assessed? When you said that you're like literally rated in order to get the job next year, does that mean that your job is shaky year to year because you have to meet a certain standard?
Because I'm not tenured. My contract is a certain amount of months.
Oh, wow.
I have someone in from the county who observes me unannounced.
Wow.
Once a week. I never know when they're coming, and they say it's to support, but for me it's like, you coming in here to make sure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, which is okay. But so if I don't meet, I'm assessed on the standards that the county has, and if I'm not meeting those standards that they report every time they come and see me unannounced to my administrators and things like that, yes, I can be asked not to come back for the next year.
So I'm at a charter and I'm a music teacher, and so it's a little different, but it's similar. So we have formal observations and we have informal. So formal is obviously when they let you know that they're coming, and then informal is when they just pop up. And mine is not monthly, but mine is yearly. So I'm on a like at will type of situation. So if they decided that they found something better, they could fire me. And because of my contract is at will, I couldn't even go back and forth with them. I could just pack my things, get on out the door.
Wow, that's stressful. And then, so I know you said, I know you're public and then you're charter. So, and I know in this area, and I know like, growing up in military schools and then just being in Tennessee towards the later half of school, we didn't have a lot of these different institutions. Like I actually did private school through a homeschool. So I was homeschooled through a private school towards the tail end. A lot of it had to do with this, violence and stuff that I came across in the school system there. So I'm familiar with that. But then here, we had charter. We didn't have charter in Tennessee, so I wasn't familiar with that initially. There's also Montessori out here. And then, of course, we have a lot of private institutions. I guess, it doesn't be a long conversation, but quickly, what's the main difference between those entities here? Or are you guys like aware? Because I'm always still kind of confused. Like I know charters funding's a little different, but then it's kind of subsidized by the state, and I know public is state, and I know private is, but that's what it is. But so how does that fit in? Is there a better environment you feel like for teachers based off what you hear from your friends or your own personal experiences?
It's so weird because I definitely want to talk to you after this show, because when I was interviewing, my mom said, no, charter schools, no, this and that. Because in the Cleveland area, since, I'm just getting like into this area, they pop up and go away. And so what's so funny, you'll hear a radio ad saying the best school, we have the best this and this and that. If it's just now opening, what data proves that your reading and your math scores prove that you have the top performing school? The school just opened this year. Facts. And they're and so, and I'm not bashing charter schools. There are great charter schools out there, but I do want to learn. I do want to know more about them, just because my background is public school, public from kindergarten through 12. So I know that they do get funded partially from the state. At least in Ohio, I did see Cleveland Public Schools buses taking charter kids to school, which was weird because we had to take the RTA, which is public transportation. So I would just be upset, like, why am I catching the bus and they're on a school bus? And this says my school district, but I'm on a bus. I don't know. So,
Interested.
It is weird how they do pop up and go away. So where is that money coming from? And when it goes away, where does it go back to?
Okay, so that's definitely a conversation we're going to have soon. So how about with your experience with charter, or like, have you seen some of the differences of Montessori, stuff like that as well?
Charter schools are kind of like nonprofits. Okay.
Okay.
They're funded by the state. So, like, for an example, my school, we serve children who are autistic. We serve children who are living in like battered homes, like all of those different things. So they come with a lot. A lot of them come with like IEPs and 501s, and they come with all of these different learning. So I think that charter schools are geared towards like transformation education. Okay. So different ways of getting the same results. Okay, so and public schools they don't really have the tolerance for all of that. They're not. Of course you can have an IEP and be going to a public school, but you don't have the resources necessary that a charter would take the time out to give you. And so I'm not sure about you said Montessori. I've never heard of Montessori.
Yeah, because I've seen a couple of them, like especially like in Northwest DC, and also like in Silver Spring. There's a few Montessori schools. I think they. Because of what
faith-based, maybe?
No, Montessori is more like hands-on. The child has more choices. It's not really a lot of pencil and paper. It's more of sensor learning.
Okay. So we do a lot of sensory learning as well.
Kind of like a School Without Walls here in DC.
Yeah.
I think they're
School of the Arts.
No, not really art until. So if we're learning sight words, instead of maybe me showing you a card and you like repeating it, maybe you're drawing it into a bag of gel.
Yes.
And like you're using your hands, you're up, you're moving, you're not sitting in the seat, you're sitting on the floor.
Instead of writing a paragraph, draw what you hear me talking about. So it's not really.
Cool.
Yeah. We do a lot of that stuff at my school.
Yeah, because I know like a lot of the Montessori schools, at least the ones I've come across in my profession, when we're working with schools of that nature, they're typically privately funded in large part, and I know that their grading scale or how they're moving kids from the next level to the next level is based off the child's pace more so than the curriculum's pace, is what I've heard. But then I don't know if that's an exact science or if that was just that particular school.
It's pretty close.
Okay.
I just know
so
more about the child, what the child wants to do, and child like choices. Yeah, I'm saying that my class is like, you sit here, you do this. No, they have choices too. They have it's kindergarten, right? So, but Montessori, even up to in the high school, is more hands-on, more open.
And then I guess also that's going to happen in the public space or even in the charter space, because the way you're regulated, where those monies are coming from, I guess they can definitely force a curriculum or keep you within a certain bound. So that I was curious about that, and I'm happy you guys were able to speak a little bit to that. One thing I wanted to talk about, because there's a bigger conversation we want to get to, but before we get there, I got to talk about pay. So I did some research on that.
Let's talk about it.
I did some research, And I guess they're saying like the average salary across the U.S. is around the mid 50,000s across the nation. Yep. It looks like the average starting salary seems to be around the mid 30,000 range, but that ranges. Because I've seen some places, I'm like, starting salary 24,000 in 2018? How? Like, what? Yeah, I mean, I know folks that get more in child support than that. I'm just saying.
That was shady.
I was just, that was shady. All right. So, but then I looked at the local area, right? I looked at the local area, and I noticed that like average salary, this is not starting, but average, they say DC is 70, and then Maryland 65. Maryland, and then Virginia 49. But they said that's average salary, so I don't know how long it takes to get there. Right. But I just kind of feel like teachers should get paid more because like that 70 sounds good. But for us that live here, we know that, well, when your rent is $3,500 a month, or even a discount is $1,200 a month just to stay in like a studio, you know, how much is 70 really taking you? Especially because you're going to probably have student loan debt.
Yeah. Not only that, but not only are they working, they said 40 hours a week, and that's bare minimum. But then there's like after school, you guys have to do lesson plans. You guys have to grade papers.
Like, but I'm new. But even like some people on my team who've been teaching for more than 3 years are still there with me when I leave. So maybe I'm like, am I gonna get out of this one day, or it seems like I'm stuck in this. Yeah.
And then your summer break is not as long as the kids because you guys leave a little later and then you have to come back for trainings and all, right?
And teach summer school because you're still kind of recovering from being a college student. Yeah,
I don't do summer school either.
Yeah, I
can't.
So bottom line is they just still need to pay you guys more. There's still an opportunity to pay you guys more.
You know, this is such a touchy topic. I really do not believe we have enough time to. I feel like all we're doing is like gracing past this. Because this is an issue everywhere. Like I said, when your kids leave your house, we are responsible for them. You know what I'm saying? And we do so much. I mean, we do so much.
Can I add something?
Yes.
Within that, because I'm starting from the bottom of the pay scale. So let's take out Valentine's Day decorations, candy. Let's take out when we go on a field trip.
Because you're paying that out of pocket, right?
I'm paying out of pocket. When we went on the field trip, you didn't bring your child's lunch. Let's take out when they peed on themselves and they don't have any extra pair of pants. Let's take out I only get this certain amount of paper and I still need paper to print because I'm still making things to build up. Like
Preach.
Like,
and there's not a system for reimbursement, right?
Let's take out for hand sanitizer. Let's take out for spray.
And y'all know these are little cesspools of disease.
And so, like, people say, oh, you can put it back on your taxes, or you can do. It shouldn't have to be like that.
Right.
Let's take out for pencils. You know,
because you only get a certain amount of whatever at the beginning of the school year, and you're supposed to figure out a way to make all of that stretch until June. And you can go and you can ask for more stuff. You can, but I mean, it's just not likely for you to get, you know, everything that you need.
I do have a quick question. On average, how many students do you have per class? Because I know that can affect.
Yeah, because class size is a big thing too,
that can
right?
affect the way that kids learn if there's like a lot of kids and one teacher.
Let's see. My biggest class is 24 students.
That's pretty big.
And they're fifth graders. And they are interesting.
Lots of energy.
Oh my goodness. So, you know, I'm like you. I'm up singing. I mean, we made up a song to the Cardi B. I mean, like, you have to really, 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 really be engaged. Yes. You do, or they'll get into absolutely anything. I have special seats. Come sit by me. You know, you can't sit over there. You're allergic to this friend. Don't sit with that person, because they just get into a whole bunch of stuff.
Allergic to that friend. So.
Oh, I was gonna say, how many kids do you have in your class?
Oh, okay. So I do work in a Title I school, which is okay. I'll say I had 21. It was so many that the county said, "Hey, that's too many. We're gonna add a 7th teacher." So the poor kids I had 4 kids that had to leave so they made a class they took 4 from like each class and made a new class. So now I have 17.
Okay.
But I'm so confused because I know I went to a Title I. I know the school I was in kindergarten was Title I, and I know we had more than 22 students because my last name was Smith and my number was always like 21 or 22. You know, you have your number.
And it could be that's where Maryland ranks as a state, you know, with education. I mean, I think Montgomery County spends, and that's just an example of one of the counties here, but, you know, it's right outside D.C. So, and I know they spend like more per student than almost anywhere in the country, or they're like in the top 10 of spending per child. And a lot of places around here try to follow the trend that Montgomery County sets. Montgomery County and Loudoun and Fairfax kind of set the standard of what everybody in the area tries to do. So I can imagine, you know, that might be part of it because they have the money.
Not trying to be like funny or anything, but I think that Montgomery County and the blessing, this is a blessing within these areas, that Montgomery County ranges from kids who are receiving food stamps to kids who parents are making software that we're using right now on our computers. So we have millionaires, and then we have people who just came from another country that's barely making anything. And so since it's funded by the county, they can kind of share the wealth in that sense, versus when you're going off of a city. So Detroit public schools, you're only getting that money from Detroit. So how is their property taxes, how is that being funded? It's going to be less money coming in for the student. So, I mean, I don't know. It's a blessing in disguise that money can trickle down, because you still have poor areas in those other counties too. But I think it's because it's such a wide range of incomes within that big county that it can kind of get spread around.
I like that. And that's definitely things to consider. And I think it's important for our viewers to hear this information because it goes a far way. Another conversation I want to get into, and we're going to probably spend the rest of the time we have left talking about that. I want to talk about this gun violence situation that's going on in America. I want to talk about some of these laws that's being passed, some of these new ideas that are being embraced. We see it started in Florida. Jay, I got a video real quick for you. Can you play that one for me? I think it's an NBC video on gun violence real quick.
Over and over, it's become the iconic footage. Students running from a school with their hands up. Columbine, Sandy Hook, and now Parkland. School shootings so familiar they go by just one name. Images that look so similar, and yet each time, new families are ripped apart. According to Everytown for Gun Safety, this is the 18th time a gun was fired on school grounds this year. Missy Jenkins Smith was shot and paralyzed in 1997 at a school in West Paducah, Kentucky. She's now a counselor at a nearby school, and she worries.
Students that I work with are looking at school shootings as normal, and to me that was not normal, and it's scary how normal it is.
8-year-old Ava Olson calls September 28, 2016, the bad day. That's when gunfire erupted on the playground at her school, killing her best friend Jacob. She still clings to a small Ninja Turtle doll that used to be his.
I'm scared every day. Sad, mad.
So she wrote a letter to the president.
I was very scared. My best friend Jacob was hurt and bled. I loved him and I was going to marry him one day. I don't want that to ever happen again. Are you going to keep kids safe?
In December, she got a letter back. The president wrote, "Thank you for your letter. It's very brave of you to share your story with me." A story that tonight seems all too familiar on another bad day. Kristen Dahlgren, NBC News, New York.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel.
So, yeah, I mean, that was a very touching video, the young lady and her testimony. And then there was been some argument about this 18 school shootings so far this year. The Blaze Network had put out saying that was a falsehood. So I had read multiple articles. So it seems like 18 is the real number. What it is not all of them have necessarily been violent. Some of them have been suicides. What it is there have been 18 shootings in the stance that weapons had been discharged on school property. So that could be anything from somebody shooting a gun in the air, shooting a gun at someone, or even someone committing suicide. That's not necessarily a mass shooting situation. But anytime and that was the NRA's spin, or a very Tea Party-ish, right-wing, alt-right spin on, it's not that big of a deal. They've even made it sound like, well, out of the 100,000 plus schools in America, only 10 kids are slain a month. Only 10. That's somebody's baby. That's somebody's child. 1 is one too many. Right. And y'all trying to make 10 like, well, when you look at the law of averages, no, that's crazy. Like, these are our babies and kids. That's the equivalent to being at someone's daycare. That daycare was shut down automatically if your child dies at the daycare, or you hear about a kid dying at a daycare. So why is that somehow acceptable at a school just because it's a public place? It's still not open to everyone. So talking about this gun violence thing, what is your biggest fear as a teacher when you know that gun violence and school shootings is kind of like a new norm in America, and it's been that way not just for the last 5 years. It's been that way really since Columbine, and they've had issues before then. So
I think my biggest fear is to fail a child, to not be able to get them to safety, to not be able to protect them. I think that is what scares me. Exactly. It scares me to, not be able to give them that security. It really does, and you just don't know.
Yeah, because what do you do in that situation? Your fight or flight resistance that kicks in. Yeah. And I mean, there's been a lot of comment about the security guard that ran, but when guns are flying. Yeah. It's not that person's a punk, but you're scared. You're scared just like much as anybody.
Didn't he have an automatic at that? The shooter?
Yeah, he had an automatic weapon.
And the security guy has just the regular,
And once again, shots are being fired, and if that's not a normal thing that happens, even soldiers buckle up.
Yeah, we have lockdown drills. Okay. That we've started. We've had them in the past as well, but we've had a couple more this year since all of of what's been going on has been going on. And so I have a co-teacher in my room, and he says to me, Russell, if something happens, we have a storage room where we keep all our instruments. He said, if something happens, you get all of the kids and you send them in and you take them into the storage room and you stand in front of them. He said, I'll stand on the outside of the door and make sure that before they get to you or try to get to you guys, they got to get to me first. Ooh. And I said to him, I can't even believe that we're having this conversation. I mean, wow. I got emotional, and I feel myself getting emotional now because, he has 3 daughters. So God forbid something like that were to happen, and they take his life, and they're trying to get to me and all of the kids who are in the storage closet, and having to take those babies in there and say, hey, just in case something happens, and this is what we have to do, I need you to be quiet. I need you to not speak, because Miss Russell wants to make sure you're safe and you get back home to mommy and daddy. That's having crazy. To say that to them makes me want to cry, but you have to hold a poker face for children, because if they see you afraid, they'll be afraid. So they think it's just this fun little drill you're doing, but you're really trying to make sure that their lives are being protected.
And then how do you feel about like this other teachers, safety from them, or like the student? Well, I guess you guys work with young enough students that maybe you're not so concerned about the student, even though there's been situations with young children like that.
Like Sandy Hook.
Yeah, but I mean, like I guess other faculty or even parents coming in and flipping out. I mean, is that a concern?
I'm very concerned. My students are very young, so it's like very emotional because I'm, using a stern voice, like trying to get them to hide in their hiding place, and they're just looking. They're 5. They're 5. Why am I training a 5-year-old to hide from a gunman
in a school?
How do they know how to hide from a gunman before they know how to read a book by themselves? What are they here for?
But there's one thing I want to bring up in this conversation, because we are the Nitty Gritty Show and we're a very social conscious show. I find it very interesting that a lot of times in inner cities there'll be metal detectors. Mm-hmm. But most of these school shootings are in these rural areas where there are no metal detectors. Mm-hmm. Now, demographically, it seems as though, maybe my facts are wrong, most of the school shootings are happening in places that are not predominantly African American Black descent. Right. So why do you think it is that we, the city schools have money for metal detectors, but they don't have the resources or the vote to put metal detectors in these other suburban schools? Is it because of the implication of what it looks like?
I think it is. Yeah.
I mean, definitely. I mean, well, you see with this new Florida bill that was passed, right? I think it was, I forget if it's $400 million or $500 million, but then a portion of that, and I brought this up on the last episode of the Nitty Gritty during the To Hell With, but a portion of that, I think it's like $18 million for one part of the program, another $69 million for the other part, was going to go to the systemic failings or training towards mental health. One was training towards mental health. That was like the 18 million, and the other 69 million was more resources towards mental health. So the systemic things that are causing mass school shootings, because what it is there's more mass school shootings in the white neighborhoods, but then as far as like normal discharge or like a weapon being found, you see that more so in like the urban areas, kids that might be working the corner and then they bring a gun with them to school, not necessarily with the intention of shooting up the school, but with the intention of I got to have my gun for when I hit the block. when I leave, right? So I think with our black kids, it's like, well, they're animals. We'll just treat them like the prison system, pre-prison system mentality. And with the white kids, it's like, oh my God, like they did the opioid epidemic. It's like, oh, we got to stop these guys from killing everybody. No one asks for white fathers and none of that. It's just let's just take care of the issue. Let's find out systemically what's going wrong and cure it. And I don't think we're doing that. I guess one thing I want to bring up too is how do you guys feel about, Florida passed the bill to want to go ahead and arm the teachers. Yep. That's what that's about. Now, I hear what you guys are saying. That's the difficulty of trying to explain to a child what's going on in just a drill situation. Right. How would teachers in mass have the capacity to say, I'm going to carry a gun on top of that?
And possibly shoot a student that I actually know who obviously may have a little episode today. Do you think that you have the capacity to shoot a student upon a situation?
And do you think it's necessary to have to pull a gun on them to tell them to calm down?
No, I do not. They're children. If you talk to them and you pull them to the side, they will adhere. They will listen. I think it's important to think about this in every aspect. You're thinking of it, from the teacher possibly, shooting a student. But what about those students who will find the arm and shoot the teacher?
That's what I'm saying.
And everybody else. You know what I'm saying? And you have those, those instances where things like that, it is. If you bring a gun into the schools, first of all, I do not agree with it. I understand. I was having I had a conversation with my best friend about it on the way here, and I said to her, I understand their position, but I do not agree with how they are going about it. I do not agree with it. I would never put a gun in my classroom with children. Anything can happen. Anything can happen when you're in the right place at the right time where you are allowed to have a gun. So why in the world would I bring this into a school with children?
That's crazy.
And you always hear about those incidents where, people have small children in the home and it's in the box and it's locked, but somehow they got it.
Yeah.
Somehow they got it, and something tragic happened. That can happen exactly in a school. Schools are open more than just 8 to dismissal. Yeah. They have after school programs. Sometimes churches are in there. Yeah. You don't know who could be in what.
Yes. Wait, one quick question. Do you guys see episodes where a child may benefit from some kind of mental health counseling? Because I feel like a lot of times when these students who go in with the guns, when you look at their history, these kids usually had issues that were, Johnny's just having an episode. Nobody really ever focused. Johnny seems a little different. And usually, I think, too, some parents get offended when you say, hey, I noticed that Johnny's acting out. They're like, my son doesn't have mental health. But do you see situations where you need to really address it?
Well, I work at a school where we have resources to notice those types of things. So we have like social workers and we have like SPED administrators and people who literally focus on the children who have those, those mental issues or whatever the case may be. And once you get to know these kids, and this is any child, you start to pick up on patterns. You start to pick up on things, things that bother them, things that they don't feel comfortable with, how to deal with them, how to chastise or discipline them. You don't necessarily have to discipline every child in front of everybody. You say, you know what, when everybody's in their small group, let me pull you out. When you feel yourself becoming combative with a child, especially me, I'll stop and say, stand right there for a second. And when everybody is off and they're doing their own thing, I'll go and address that situation. Because a lot of kids don't like to be embarrassed. You know what I'm saying? And so,
And I even heard that they said, like, even through the week, you can see a change in attitude with kids who are displaced or in a neglectful situation. Like, Mondays are kind of rough because they're coming off the weekend and what they're dealing with parents. Then you see kind of like a calm around Wednesday. But then come Friday, it's back to the weekend. I think sometimes the reality of some of these kids, the only meals they're getting are at the school. Or the reality of like, now I got to be around mom, I got to be around dad. Maybe they got older siblings that are involved in stuff. And you see there's an uptick in their behavior. But it's not necessarily towards you as a teacher. It's just something about the environment they have to go back home to.
Yeah, and even when we have like vacations or breaks. So we know that Christmas break is coming up. Get ready for a time.
Really?
You're gonna have a time.
So that's why they play all those boring movies.
They do play movies right before break. You're right.
Like, let me just calm these jokers down.
I'm telling you, or break time.
Or a long weekend. Coming back on that Monday.
You gotta put your seatbelt on.
I know we're wrapping up, but I do want to ask one quick question. It was proven that back in the 60s, or before segregation became a law, that when black kids were taught by African Americans who cared for them, they actually excelled and performed better. And then when we started to integrate is when they saw that there was a possible decline. Wow. I've heard of these schools now that are popping up that are like very like African inspired. and they focus on you being black. What are your takes on that? Do you think it's important for kids to interact with other people of different races, or do you think there is some benefit for black children to be encouraged and taught by people who look like them?
I think both. Okay. I think that I tell my kids all the time, there's life outside of where we go to school. There's life outside of here. So, this is not it. So we're preparing you for life after. And so I think that it's important to have people in schools that look like you, but I think that it's also important to have I went to a predominantly Caucasian school in college, but I went to an urban high school, and I felt like it was very important to, one of the reasons why, other than getting a full scholarship, was because I wanted to be around something other than what I was familiar with, because I knew that is what society was going to give me. I wasn't going to go and walk into, Wall Street or something like that, or some big business building or whatever the case may be, and be, and it just be all black. Yeah, it's just not going to be that way.
I agree. I think that they should have educators from all races. However, I think that teachers should be trained. I think we have a lack of training when it comes to being cultural.
Absolutely.
Like having your cultural awareness. I think educators have a lack of awareness in that, just from being a student and now being the teacher. So as long as the educator is aware of the culture that they're working with, I feel like it's fine.
But I love that. I haven't heard of it. I actually want to, get the name of the school.
I know there's one for sure in was it Chicago, and I think another one's in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they teach like African culture, and like the kids do African dance, and it's like black teachers.
I think that's amazing.
Yeah, so I can't believe we're running out of time.
Yeah, we're pretty much out of time.
I wanted to ask you guys going to a predominantly black environment and then going into a PWI, how did that make you feel? Did you feel prepared? But I know we don't have time, so we're going to have to do a part 2. We want to get your social media handles and tell people what you're doing, your podcast, your nonprofit, so people can follow and support you.
Well, you can follow me at Miss Smith the Teacher on Instagram. I do have a podcast coming soon, 20s in Teaching with Tiff, so be sure to be on the lookout with that. So at Miss Smith the Teacher.
And
that's what's up.
You can follow me at Shantal Russell on Instagram, and I also have a nonprofit organization where I service girls from ages 10 to 18 years old, and we kind of just give them a safe haven and a place for them to kind of like be themselves and talk and chill and be young girls.
That's what's up. Look, it's been a pleasure having you young ladies on. Really smart. I think that our viewers really got a lot from this conversation we had with you. We're going to have you on again for like a part 2, because there's still a lot of things we could definitely dig into and talk more about. Some things we had to glass over. One final thought I want people to consider too as we close out is, in times of slavery, or whenever they try to teach something away from us, they always do it first by attacking education. And that's something that we have to remember. I know we're outside of Black History Month, so now everybody's focused on everything else. But one thing we can't remember is the importance of black excellence and its ties to education and exposure. They kept us in slavery for a long time simply by just denying us the ability to be educated. But because they didn't really value faith themselves, they gave us a Bible and they messed up. Right. So I know a lot of Hoteppers don't believe in the word, but you know what? A lot of people dug our ways out by learning how to read the scriptures. Hello. Whether you believe in the faith or not, that was a reading tool that got us out of bondage. People could say that it kept us enslaved, but I'm sorry. When they put that Bible in our hand and they gave us the ability to read, comprehend, dictate, and all those things, it freed us. Yeah. All of our civil rights leaders were all men of faith, whether they were Christian or Muslim, right? They were all men of faith. Absolutely. Or they believed in something. So there's a little shout out to all you atheists out there.
Y'all see this calling.
Whatever. So anyways, that's been it. Thank you young ladies for coming on again. Awesome conversation. I can't wait to have you on again. Kat, can you tell them where they can find us at?
Please follow us on Facebook and IG. We are at the Nitty Gritty Show, and we actually have a Twitter, which is at just Nitty, right? That's what you made it now?
The Nitty, the Nitty Show.
Yes.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. So look, it's been a great show. Thank you all for watching. Thank you, young ladies, once again for coming on. It's your boy Jay DeCosta.
It's your girl Katniss.
Together we are the Nitty Gritty. Look, we out. Y'all be blessed. Have a happy Monday.